Introducing Oakley Meta Vanguard, the new performance AI glasses designed for athletes with an action-ready ultra-wide camera, powerful open-ear speakers, and built-in Meta AI that syncs with your Garmin devices for real-time insights while you train. Take your performance to the next level with Oakley Meta Vanguard. Athletic intelligence is here. Learn more on meta.com.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video.
That's going to be caught.
This week, the Minnesota Vikings head west to face the Los Angeles Chargers.
They'll take that all day.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party. TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's the Vikings and the Chargers, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
This episode is brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. What do you bring to a holiday party? Simple, a bottle of Casamigos. Because nothing gets the party started like a Casamigos margarita, which isn't just for summer. In fact, it's the perfect pour all year round. Casamigos is the gift that always feels right, because anything goes with my Casamigos. Please drink responsibly. Imported by Casamigos Spirits Company, White Plains, New York. Casamigos Tequila, 40% alcohol by volume.
I'm Chris Wynn, and welcome to another How We're the podcast. And we gather once again to bask in the fact that Sunderland are 7th in the Premier League table, or joint 5th, as I think most of us will prefer. We have the joint second best defensive record in the league, and I think something I saw it overnight. I think something like the 6th best record in Europe. On that front, having gained clean sheets in half of our league games so far this season. So things are more than rosy in the world of Sunderland AFC. So we decided to talk a little bit more about our last win, as well as look ahead to our fixture at Chelsea to look back at some of the games we've had in the past in the capital, and some of it doesn't make for good listening, I'm afraid. So I have two fellas with beaming smiles that suggest that they have all the knowledge to answer those questions that have come in. First up, we have Johnny Hawley. Hello, Johnny.
Yeah, good day, Chris. Ready, willing, and able to answer the questions, which is easy to say now before I've heard them.
Yes, as you were at the bar on Saturday, mate. It sounds like you were enjoying yourself, Paul.
Hey, listen, if somebody puts a robot pint in front of us, it's going to get drunk. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no two ways about it. And every pint goes down that little bit easier when Sunderland win games of football. So, yeah, it was a great day. I wasn't enjoying myself quite so much on Sunday morning, but, Saturday afternoon, it was class.
Just imagine any South Park fans changing Eric Cartman's Robot Friend song to My Robot Pint and singing that as you're standing at the bar. But last but certainly not least, we have Ant Warson with us as well. All right, Ant?
I'm good, yeah. Robot Pints are tremendous, by the way. And I am now going to be singing that song every time I'm at the Hilton.
I can see you doing a little skip in the doorway singing your song there, Ant.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I haven't had one. Tell us about these robot pints then.
So basically, it is honestly like we're around about the same age, Chris. I'm of that generation where you find newer things exciting, don't you? Like new up-to-date things. It's like really good, like the checkouts at supermarkets. I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I find buying new tea towels exciting now. Yeah, that's my life, you know what I mean?
So basically, you get your pints, you put it in this like gizmo, this machine. It shuts the shutters, and then it pours perfectly. And Johnny will probably, double up on this one. It pours the perfect pint.
My God, it's a good pour. It is a good pour. He's not wrong there.
It's just unreal. I'm sorry, I'm not one of these that AI's taken over and all that stuff, but that is the future for me. That is the future.
That's what technology should be used for. Perfect pint delivery systems.
So all this funding that's going into life-changing technology, and you guys are like, well, this can pour the perfect pint, and that's what it's designed for.
Listen, what else are billionaire owners for in football if not for getting the perfect pint delivery systems around the ground, mate?
Yeah, but then surely AI has the ability to take pints away from us, which I'm a bit worried about as well. It just suddenly says, no, these things aren't good for you. I'm not
You've
going
had
to pour
enough.
them out. Yeah.
That's a much different Q&A pod, that, Chris.
Oh, I mean, Ant, imagine that if the machine said no.
Can you imagine the first ever barring from an AI pint?
Yeah.
You're out.
You'd have to have a breathalyzer, but it could smell it on your breath whether you actually need it anymore, and it just refused you more. But anyway, yes, Johnny, that is a very different pod. Let's get back on track. So we'll talk a bit about the Wolves game, but I just wanted to bring some stats up that Craig Chapman very kindly sent me ahead of the pod. Some general stats as well here. So Sunderland have 14 points in their opening 8 Premier League games this season. It's our most since 1999-2000, which we also had 14 after 8 games. And the most by a promoted club since Wolves in 2018-2019, who had 15 points. Wolves have failed to win any of their opening 8 league games for the second season running. They're just the second side to do so in consecutive Premier League campaigns. Can you remember who the other club was, gents?
Want to take a wild guess and say they play in red and white?
They absolutely do. It was Sunderland back.
Was it not Sunderland?
Yeah, 2015-16 and 2016-17, we did it exactly the same. I know we've tried to wipe it from our memories, but it's there. It's on the records. So unfortunately, it will always stay there. No side has won more home points in the Premier League than Sunderland this season with 10 points. Only Arsenal have conceded fewer home goals than Sunderland this season. We've only conceded 2. Arsenal have conceded only 1. Since the start of the 2022-23 campaign, Sunderland captain Granit Xhaka has been on the winning side in 77 different league games. Only Valverde with 82 has won more games, so that was 5 more in the big 5 European leagues. And Nordi Michele scored his first ever Premier League goal, of course, but he's the 3rd Frenchman to score for Sunderland this season after Isidore and Lefebvre. And it's the first time Sunderland have had 3 different French scorers in a single campaign in the Premier League. So some good stats there. But I'll start with you, Johnny, on some of the general stuff, because I listened to Sunday's pod with Gav and Martin. And Martin kind of disagreed slightly with Gav. Gav was like, no, felt really comfortable in that second half. And Martin was like, I didn't. And at one point he was worried about getting a solitary point out of the game. How did you feel as that second half went on?
I think I'd certainly say that I was leaning more towards Martin and Gav in that sort of debate. I think I said similar in the reaction pod in the pub with the robot pint. I thought that because Gav said something about it being our most comfortable win of the season, and we never under pressure and all that sort of stuff. But I actually disagreed. I thought that the West Ham game was arguably a more routine win, but cloaked in the circumstance of the first game of the season and all the rest of it, which kind of built it up into something a little bit more than it was really as a game of football. And I think Martin's right. In that second half against Wolves, I do think, look, we were never under pressure in the sense that we were, backs against the wall, clearing chances off the line, they're hitting the woodwork sort of thing. But I do think there were, particularly the sort of first 10, 15 minutes of the second half, stood out to me as a period of the game where we were not necessarily in control. We weren't making the run and we weren't dictating the game. And so I think that, listen, that's going to happen in games of football in the Premier League, no matter who you're playing. Whether it's a team who's winless at the bottom of the table or whether it's the team who's top, you're going to have certain parts of the game, sometimes more than others, where you're having to kind of, you're playing to the tune that they're composing for you, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I do think there were times in the second half in particular where that was the case. But having said that, I do still think that Sunderland were, we were definitely never in serious danger of losing the game. And while yes, there were times where we could have arguably shored up a little better defensively, and we maybe were in danger of conceding, and then who knows? Do we take a point? Do we not? What happens from that point's anybody's guess. But yeah, I think overall, I do think we were still reasonably comfortable, and I think as we made more substitutions, I think we managed the game better and better. I think it was one of those where sometimes it happens, doesn't it? The first half unfolds how it unfolds, and then after half time, sometimes a game is just completely different for a while, and it's many factors: opposition's team talk, their changes, your changes, all that kind of thing that comes into it, the mental side of everything as well. going in at halftime defending a lead, you come out and you're like, well, do we go for it? Do we not? Do we sit back? So yeah, I think there were certainly moments where we weren't at our best, but I think overall we were still comfortable and we were certainly full value for the 3 points. I think nobody would watch that game of football and say Wolves deserved anything out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, John, you touched on it there that, in that first half, we could have easily been 3-0 up at half time. Isidore is a yard, either side. If he's onside, then we go ahead even earlier than we did. Then, we've got we're hitting the post. We could have been out of sight by half time. And you've kind of got to expect that. Gav talked about how good some of those players are in that Wolves side, 2 Brazilian internationals in there. There are a good side. They've got some good players. And if they have a first half like that, and we haven't put them out of sight, you've got to expect a reaction like that, haven't you?
Oh, 100%, especially, where they are in the league. That was, I think we'd said it last week, didn't we, where I didn't feel it was a must-win game for us, but I felt it was a must-win game for Wolves, against a side who they're going to be thinking they're going to be down there with them come the end of the season. And for me, I think it was a test of character in the second half because we didn't play well in the second half and we did allow Wolves to come on to us. And like I say, there's no easy games in this league. We're going to be under pressure against every side we play in this division. Even a West Ham game where it was relatively comfortable. First half, they had a couple of chances, didn't they? So it happens. I think it was maybe just a case of tired legs, especially at the back. Obviously Alderete had travelled a long way. Ballard and Hume had put 2 massive shifts in. For Ireland, especially Ballard against Germany. So that was understandable. And obviously Noah Siddiqui was half fit when he saw. I think that was going to happen. It was just without them creating, because it didn't create too much, only the one way he went through and he probably should have scored when he clipped it wide. I wasn't really fearing them scoring. It was just, you just felt that kind of bit, the building pressure in the team and in the fans was, we need the second goal. And the fact it came very late on with a freak own goal was brilliant, and you just felt the weight just lift off everybody because you knew we'd won then. But no, it's part and parcel of this game. We are going to concede chances and stuff like that. It's fair play to our defenders and Robin Roth as well, who made a good save as well, that they switched on for 90 plus minutes and kept that clean sheet, where you've seen Sunderland sides in the past who've just wilted and folded and conceded the points. So fair play to them. I think it was a very, very well-earned point, to be honest. And another one of them where we've proved something this season where we didn't play well for 90 minutes, but we came away with the result. And that's a sign of a very good football team at the minute, Chris.
Yeah, and I just want to say, by the way, on that, I completely agree. That second half, you've seen Sunderland sides wilt and either drop the points or lose the game entirely. And I think the perfect example for me is the Steve Bruce teams.
Yeah.
How many times under Steve Bruce did we go a goal? Well, how many times did we go a goal up in the first place? Not enough. But how many times did we go a goal up and then just, it was 10 men behind the ball, 11 men behind the ball. You're dropping 5 yards every 5 minutes. That was, I think, the big difference for me with this team compared to our previous teams is that I think you were bang on to identify that as part of the second half. And, I think we've got so much more of a solid base to build on. We don't feel like we need to do that, which is how we were then able to still push on and get the second goal.
Well, yeah, just building off that point that Johnny's just made, and that I made a note on the game where 10 minutes. I think it was the first 10 minutes of the second half. Wolves had 70% possession, and we just basically dropped really deep. But do you think that there's an element of confidence in this side that actually during periods of game, because you always hear a Register Brisk talk about stories in games and scenarios, and that he would have looked at this 10-minute spell as this is part of the journey in the game, that actually during this time we have to sit deep, we have to defend. But there's an element of confidence in that he says, there's going to be a period in game where you're going to have to do this, but we can see it through because we've got that organisation to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you've seen that in Register Breeze's sides, this season and last season. I mean, a perfect one to point out is the Coventry game, where down at Coventry, where we did defend for nigh on 60-odd minutes, and then Wilson Isidore goes and bangs a goal in which was a completely against the other player. But when you looked at that game, you look back on that game, the amount of times we probably all watched it collectively, we never looked like we were going to concede a goal up until when we scored, we conceded straight away, which obviously wasn't part of the plan. But even that like 60, 70 odd minutes was very, very comfortable. The same at the Stadium of Light, where we did that as well, and we nearly got away with, playing that out for a 0-0 draw. It was just, a lapse in concentration and all that. But the fact that he's bought these players in, the likes of Valderreta and Nori Mukiele, who was absolutely outstanding, by the way, on Saturday. What a fantastic player he is. The fact he's bought these players in, to give us that stability at the back of me, and obviously Dan Ballard going around winning every header that was there. You know what I mean? I think he's still jumping up and down the stadium right at the minute. Absolutely amazing. And I thought Trey Hume, left back, was very, very solid, but as well, and I think they've got complete confidence in what's behind them as well in Robin Ruffs, who again didn't have to do much, but what he did do, he did brilliantly. So really, really good, really, really good to see, Chris. And what it is, it's building that foundations now that, we've got the back sorted out, and we are, like I say, we are going to be under pressure. Look what's coming on Saturday. We're going to be under a lot of pressure. Then we're not going to see much of the ball. When you've got 5 defenders doing that, and your goalkeeper, it's tremendous.
Yeah. And just going off what Ant just said there, Johnny, about going to Stamford Bridge. I mean, we'll talk a lot about it obviously this week, but just in the way that we've come up to the Premier League, do you almost think that we're well suited to it, or we've took to it in a way where, we haven't got, and you might say it's a winning style of football, but not in a way where it's a Manchester City blown sides away or a Liverpool blown sides away. We're doing what it takes to win a game, and that's not maybe slick football every 2 minutes, or it's not necessarily counter-attack every 2 minutes. It's not one method of playing. It's just being organised, and then after that, doing what you need to get the win and get the points by taking those 1 or 2 chances and making sure you're tight at the back.
I couldn't agree more. I want to cast my mind back to International Fans Weekend last season, and the group of intrepid Roker reporters crowding around the bar, all, sinking pints and chatting Sunderland with each other. And I was talking to Dan Harrison, who does, all the talking tactics and stuff. He's got a brilliant, mind for football. And we were chatting about this exact thing, about, obviously at the time, we were still in the Championship. Everything was up in the air. We didn't know whether we'd be able to get into the playoffs or what was to come. But we were talking about this exact question and the style of football that we played. And we were kind of all agreeing, even in the Championship, we were effectively playing a brand of football suited to the Premier League, which is something that's quite unusual for promoted teams, obviously, because by and large, the kind of, the accepted wisdom in the modern game, like you touched on, Chris, about, it's not how Man City play, it's not how Liverpool play. The accepted wisdom is the better teams in any given division dominate the ball and, like you say, playing lovely passing triangles every couple of minutes and all the rest of it and all the movement and stuff. Very total football, But we totally went against the grain with the way that we played. And I think, I imagine, and he would never admit this, but I imagine a large part of Régis Lebris's thinking was, well, it's all well and good playing a good style of football for this league, but when the end goal is to get in the league above, there's no point ripping everything up and starting from scratch when you're in, August and you're looking down the barrel of a Premier League season. You go, oh shit, how are we going to do this? So I think, all the foundations for the way that we play were actually laid last season. And then to bring it back to this weekend, this is the kind of game where it really gets put to the test, doesn't it? Because this is the kind of game effectively that it's designed for. And I think you're totally right again to identify the fact that, the way that we do play football effectively, it's not, like you say, it's not a, in inverted commas, winning style. It's very pragmatic. It almost reminds me a little bit in some ways of when Big Sam came and he was all about, squeeze the extra few percentage points wherever you can, whether that's just getting it down in the channel to a big man, because then you're going to win the territorial battle and get into the opposition third and all that kind of thing. So this is the kind of game where we need that. And you were totally right with the fact that it's going to be the kind of game where if we're going to get something out of it and if we're going to score a goal, it'll be 1 chance, maybe 2. It's not going to be, we've had 3, 4, 5 chances and then we've finally put one away. You're not going to get that away at Stamford Bridge unless they have a stinker or you have the absolute game of your lives, which I'm sure we'll, touch on a few examples of both of those in later in the pod. But yeah, I think for me, this is a big test, and I feel like I say this every week, but it'll be a real yardstick of where we're at this season, because obviously the detractors all say, oh, Sunderland have had an easy run and favourable fixtures and all the rest of it. But you can only beat what's in front of you. Having said that, we have had a reasonably favourable go of it up to this point. And we've had to take the points, and we have, which is brilliant. But now, this is the start of the real test. The next 7 games, we play the top 5. So this is where this gets put to the test. And my overriding hope for this period is just that Labrie sticks to what's worked so far. The worst thing we could do is have a couple of poor results, ship a few goals, and panic, because it's a long season and we're going to get back round to the point where we've got games that we need to win at home against, teams who are going to be in and around us in the table. We cannot be carrying psychological scars from games like this weekend. We have to be able to come out of it with our heads held high and to be able to, push on forward through the season, doing what's got us to this point. So, yeah, I do think the way we play is suited to this sort of game, but it relies on a lot of things going your way on the day. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Just last word on the actual game from the weekend, Ant. If when the manager looks back at this game, what do you think is going to be the biggest things that he learned from this game? In terms of that period that we're talking about in the second half, maybe not taking our chances in the first half. Maybe some individual players, because he made quite a few changes during the game and made a couple of high-profile changes before the game. We talked about maybe sending a signal to Masuaku, and we saw the starting 11. So what do you think he got from the weekend?
Obviously, resilience. Again, like as I'm going back to before, a team who didn't particularly play well in the second half, but still found a way to win. We found a way to get a goal as well, which again, it's bizarre, but we scored. So there we are. I think as well, what I would have found out more if I was managing that side was the strength that he's got in depth of his squad. The subs that he made, obviously needed to be made. I think Traore was struggling. I thought Rigg was okay, but he was, his misplaced passes were at one point, I think, were going to cost us. But the subs that he made, to change all that, and I think the sub to bring Talby on was excellent, and we're finding a lot more about Talby now with him coming off the bench, coming out on the left hand side. He's been absolutely superb. And what I think you can look at and think, well, I can bring these lads in who are young, and Talby's just a young lad. Obviously, Eliza Mayenda came on, did well again. And he's only a young lad. I don't think he's scared to thrust him into the big games like this. I don't think he'd be worried at all with Talby starting on Saturday, which is obviously, like we say, a big game against, for me, a very good side. But like I say, probably just strength in depth, strength overall in grinding that result out, which is what they did. I think it's all good signs, to be honest, Chris. So I think, like I say, he'd have learned probably just that, really. I think he already knows a great deal about them, but that on Saturday was the fact that we didn't play well and we were under pressure and we still found a way. That's a great sign.
Yeah, that's it. And just a question out to both of you before we finish on the weekend. Did either of you cross Stamford Bridge or Kale Crossing? Any good?
Well, as we christened it on the reaction pod, the 3-pint bridge gives you so much extra time to stay in the city centre before you go in. No, it was brilliant, actually. And I'm realising how pathetic this is going to sound as I say it, but it's a lovely bridge, It really is. It's very, very nice. Yeah, I can see you both laughing at us, and fair enough.
But, no, Johnny, I'm not. You've got to have you've got to keep your finger in architecture. You know what I mean? It's it is a lovely bridge. You're right.
And I'm biased as well because my dad's an architect, or wasn't his prime. He's a project manager now. He's been ground down by the system, but he's he's imparted. That must be the 5% of his love for architecture imparted into me crossing that Regisler Bridge on Saturday. But no, I mean, jokes aside, it's about time. You know what I mean? It's about time we had a bit of infrastructure and investment, really visible on a match day. It's great. I think it's really, really good for the match day experience as a whole, because I think, and I'm not going to go on too much longer about it, but I think there's much better of a sense of togetherness between the fans going to the ground when you're literally going from city centre direct to the ground, if you know what I mean. Whereas when you cross the Weymouth Bridge, the big green boy, Obviously you're coming out like the wrong side of the metro stop, and then people are maybe splitting in different directions and stuff. On the new bridge, it is everyone together, bang, straight to the ground and in, which I think, look, it's not going to make a huge difference. We're not going to get extra points this season for it, but I do think it's a good development. It's about time.
Yeah, extra points or extra pints?
Definitely extra points.
Okay.
We'll see about the extra points.
Did you go across the land?
I didn't. No, I
didn't.
park to the Colliery Tavern behind part of the stadium, so I don't go into the city before games unless I get on the minibus. So no, but I am in Sunday night. I'll get a quick plug-in recording for the last game against Newcastle, so I might have a look and have a little crossover tonight. See what happens.
Well, I think that's a good time to stop for a break on Bridges Weekly, and we'll be back after these ads.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least that was the plan. Except now the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
And welcome back to How the podcast. And we've gone through last weekend, our previous win against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And now we need to start looking ahead. But we're going to look back a bit to look ahead, because we're going to look at past meetings against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, which, as I said, we are approaching Halloween. It really doesn't make for good reading, to be honest. Our total record at Stamford Bridge, we played 62. We've won only 10 of those games. We've drawn 12 and we've lost 40 in all competitions. So basically, we win 1 in 6, we draw 1 in 6, and we lose 4 in 6. But we have lost the last 6 since 2010. So we're due a result there. We have taken some huge spankings at the Bridge over the years. Looking at some of the results, we got beat 4-1 in 1924, 5-0 in 1930, 4-0 in 1933, 4-0 in 1938, 3-0 in 1950. 5-1 in 1969, 6-2 in 1997, which I remember Mark Hughes playing in that game against us for Chelsea. The famous 4-0 defeat in 1999 on the opening day of the season. We got beat 4-0 and 3-0 at the Bridge in 2002. We got beat 5-0 in 2008. 7-2 was the scoreline in 2010, and 5-1 was the scoreline in 2017, which was our last appearance at Stamford Bridge.
You better mark this podcast as explicit on Spotify, because that does not make for good listening, that.
It's absolutely horrific reading, which is surprising, because Chelsea weren't always the Chelsea that we see today. I mean, when I was young, they were in the second division, trying to get kind of promotion alongside us back in the day. But look, we want to start somewhere. So I'm going to start with the famous Milk Cup semi-final game in 1985. And I want to read a little bit. I've got, again, if anyone listened to the last one we did of this, I've got All the Lads, which was a publication the Echo brought out in the summer of 1989, which kind of put their match reports of kind of classic games in a book. And I just want to read a little bit about the game, because as everyone knows, it was a bit of an epic. It ended up 3-2. Surprise, surprise, people will be amazed to know that David Speedie got sent off in the game. If anyone listened to our Gary Bennett podcast a week or so ago, they'll know all about our history with David Speedie. But yeah, so the first leg was the first leg we won. Let me see. I can't remember now what the score would have been. Let me work this out. It was we won 2-0. But in the game, David Speedie put Chelsea ahead, and it was obviously getting a bit nervy. But just want to read a little bit from the actual report. It said, despite being favourites for the tie, Sunderland beat the odds stacked against them last night. They beat a partisan Chelsea crowd, an early Chelsea goal, some ferocious tackling, and even some of Chelsea's moronic supporters. Plastic seats, wooden stakes and coins were hurled at police as Sunderland beat Chelsea 3-2 on the night to go through to Wembley 5-2 on aggregate. It said Clive Walker, Sunderland's 2-goal hero, because Colin West got the other one. He said, Clive Walker, Sunderland's 2-goal hero, was attacked by a fan and another aimed a kick at goalkeeper Chris Turner as Chelsea fans invaded the pitch after Sunderland had taken a 2-1 lead. And in a scene like something out of the Keystone Cops, a policeman was chasing a fan across the goal mouth as Colin West scored Sunderland's third. Just unbelievable. It said, towards the end of the game, it said it was the second goal. It said it was that goal that sparked the trouble. Chelsea fans began tearing up seats in their own stand and came over the perimeter fence. And then Colin West scored the third. And it said a few minutes later, Chelsea fans were still running around the pitch, and one of them swung a punch at Clive Walker, and Chelsea's keeper actually rushed out to help the Sunderland player. I mean, absolutely incredible scenes. Just over, I think it was around 44,000 were reported in the Echo, but actually on other reports, there were about 38,000 there. But that was a report by Mark Desmond. That was at the time, but an absolutely epic semi-final that took us to the Milk Cup final that year. But again, Johnny, you know, probably, I mean, I remember kind of, I was very, very young when hooliganism came in and all that sort of stuff. And obviously the Hillsborough kind of changed that, and the Premier League and all Seater stadiums and the Taylor report. And you had the Newcastle semi-final where they invaded the pitch. But it is a good thing. I mean, we're kind of laughing almost as we're going through, but I know some people who were there, and I've spoken to them in the past, and they said actually it was bloody scary. So it is a good thing we don't see those scenes anymore, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like you say, we can laugh about it now. You can only laugh about it because there's distance from it.
Yeah.
You know, if it was still going on, I don't think we'd be making such light of it. But no, look, it's part of the beautiful tapestry of English football. It has its ugly parts on it, doesn't it? You know, there are fantastic things about football as it was 40, 50, 60 years ago. And, you know, there are so many things that we've kind of lost in the modern game. I think most people would agree. You know, the atmosphere is much more sanitized, and the game as a whole, you know, it's so much more of a product, and it's a commodity to kind of be packaged up and sold, which, you know, I think a lot of people do feel like maybe the soul of football there's a bit of a battle for the soul of football, you know, I would say at the moment. Whereas, you know, back in the day, in the mid 80s, the soul of football was it was pretty clear. You know, there was certainly a stranglehold on it by the slightly more partisan elements, as the Echo so diplomatically referred to them near the start of that report you read out. But yeah, look, it's something it's a good thing it's not part of the game anymore. But when you do look back at those kind of iconic games, and you mentioned the playoff semi-final against Newcastle as well, where, you know, that, I mean, every Sunderland fan, you know, I wasn't born when that game happened, but I've seen the clips of it. I've heard the stories. I could tell you about the game as if I was there. It's those moments that people really do remember, and it does elevate an occasion as long as you come out on the right side of the result, which thankfully in 1985 we very much did. We'll not talk about the final though.
Yeah. Well, I think Tony Norman broke the world record for a 100-meter sprint when the final whistle went at St James's Park that night. But we'll move on to my first memory of playing Chelsea at the Bridge, which was September 1990. And it was a season where we did this so much. We took the lead, I think, on 14 different occasions in this season against I remember taking the lead at Anfield as well. I was just a kid, and for brief moments in this season, I thought we were brilliant. When Dennis Smith took us up in the First Division, we took the leads at places like Anfield. But on 8th of September 1990 at Stamford Bridge, it was Dennis Smith Sunderland against Bobby Campbell's Chelsea, and we took the lead. We equalised twice in this game. We had to come back from behind. Kerry Dixon gave Chelsea the lead after 7 minutes. Marco, half an hour later, equalised. Kevin Wilson put Chelsea back ahead. Kieran Brady, just before the hour, equalised again, and it was a late Dennis Wise penalty that broke Sunderland's hearts and took all 3 points for Chelsea. But quiz question for you both. Who was the future Sunderland player in that Chelsea side in September 1990?
He's always got them, man. It's why we call Chris the Oracle Barlow, everyone.
Well, and I've got Stacker open, so
he knows. You didn't hear it anywhere. You didn't know it anywhere. B, he knows that me and Johnny haven't got a clue.
I'll give you 2 clues. I'll give you 3 clues. He was a defender. He was signed by Peter Reid, and he was a Welsh international.
Gareth Hall.
It was Gareth Hall, absolutely.
Christ. Again, explicit warning on this episode, please.
I mean, that Sunderland legend, Chris, would have got it straight away.
Yes. And then we move on a couple of years. We go to March 1992. And I do apologise for some of the older listeners on this. I'm sure they're screaming and shouting and go, what about this one in the 60s and 70s or whatever? And I do apologise, but we'll try and do ones we can either vaguely remember or can kind of get a bit more fun on the match reports. But I'm sure Kelvin will help us out in future weeks with these. But yeah, we move on to March 1992, FA Cup quarter-final when we played Chelsea, and we went to Stamford Bridge. We'd already beaten West Ham and I think Oxford and Port Vale on the way. And this one was a bit kind of a poignant game because we were playing Ian Porterfield's Chelsea, of course, who was manager of them at the time. And Clive Allen gave Chelsea the lead. We were massive underdogs. He was struggling in the second division. And we travelled to Stamford Bridge, just not really expecting much. But with about 10 minutes to go, ball over the top, and John Byrne, who'd scored in every round up to this point, got his head on it and steered it into the far corner to give Sunderland a replay. And of course, we went back to Roker Park and we won that. And that was our last FA Cup win at Roker Park until it closed, of course. But Gareth Hall was in the team that night as well. So you can see why Peter Reid split some cash out for him later on. But yeah, so we move on, and I want to move on to, and I'm guessing you might remember this one quite vividly. Opening day of the season, 7th of August, 1999. We just getting 105 points, winning the title, and everyone thought, oh, we've cracked it. And we had a bit of a strange summer. You know, we have to remember that Michael Bridges left, Alan Johnson left, Lee Clark left, Andy Melville left. All those players played well over 40 games in that title-winning season. And well, I think Alan Johnson was. I say he left. He basically left because he was out of favour with Peter Reid, and once that happened, you basically left. But there was only Steve Bold in the starting lineup who was making his debut. Big news before the game was that Chris Lumsden was playing left midfield, who hadn't played much the previous season, but he came in. Thomas Helmer, who was one of the big signings, was on the bench, and there was rumours of a bust-up before the game. And then we got absolutely spanked 4-0. But it might have been one of the best things that happened to us.
Do you know what? And it was, wasn't it, for that season, because I think we needed that. Not hammering, because I mean, it was just men against boys, wasn't it? Like the whole game was basically just Chelsea absolutely dominating us. I mean, it could have been about 7-0, couldn't it? Really, realistically, because Tommy Sorensen made a couple of really good saves as well. It was a rude away. I think because obviously when we'd last went up, we went straight back down even that same season under Reid, and it was kind of that. I think everyone was expecting us to go a bit like this season. Everyone's expecting us to go down and all that stuff, and getting Chelsea away, as you just mentioned before, with our stellar record there, was always going to be difficult. And I think they were one of the tips for the title as well, Chris, that year, because it obviously had Zola, Poirier, they assembled quite a good side, and we went there, full of hope, full of wonder. And it didn't quite work out that way. It was a right hand. But to be fair, the Poirier goal still resonates in me because it was an absolute beauty. You know, the one at the end where he hits it on the volley, great goal. I do remember actually the 6-2. I remember that one as well. We were garbage then as well. I just remember their stadium being half built because they were not going to stand down, weren't they? And it was just like weird, like, you know, like it's been one of them COVID games when no one was there, wasn't it? But that was bad. But yeah, it was. But as you said, though, it was a great thing because we, from that season, ended up finishing seventh. We got the European Golden Shoe winner in Super Curve. Ended up having an all right season, and you know, got revenge on them the same season we're beating them to stay in life. So it was all good things. All good things for us. Yeah, sometimes you've got to go back to go forward. Chris, and we certainly went back that game.
Well, I was going to quickly say that 6-2 might as well go back because actually the crowd that day was only 24,000 because
felt like it.
because they were building that stand, and it was it was kind of Matthew Harden and Ken Bates era when they were fighting it out, wasn't it? I think when they started building that stand. It might have been the Matthew Harden stand they were building actually. But the strange thing about that game is we went 3-0 down after 5 minutes in the second half. We went 3-0 down, sorry. And then 5 minutes later, it was 3-2. And we thought we might get something from this game. And it was a Sunday. It was live on Sky. And I remember thinking, oh, you know, that we might actually get something out of this game. And then kind of last 15 minutes, Mark Hughes scored twice. And Roberto Di Matteo scored another one. And they scored two in the last kind of couple of minutes, which just kind of finished us off. But it reads 6-2, but it wasn't like that, was it?
No, it was as you said, it was a very topsy-turvy game. And I was with you. I thought when we got back, because I think Kevin Ball scored the second, didn't you, when their goalkeeper come up with his eyes shut.
Alex Ray?
Yeah, was that who it was it?
Alex Ray.
Alex Ray. So, did Bally get the first one? Bally definitely scored in that game, didn't he?
No, it was Paul Stewart.
Paul Stewart and Alex Ray, yeah. And the keeper came out with his eyes shut. And it's like... oh, right, there we go. You know, we're in this. We might get a point here, and what's happening? And then it went disastrously after that. But I mean, you know, that could have been. It's one of them could have been because if we had picked up, we probably would have stayed up in that season. But it was, it was carnage, wasn't it? But
Well, just going back to the 1999, the 4-0. It's amazing to think with half an hour left, Carsten Fredgaard was brought on for his debut and replaced Kevin Ball, which was probably a strange decision looking back for Peter Reid. But the thing
Chris
is about
Lumsden on the left.
And on the left. Yeah. Well, he came off. He came off at half time for Gavin McCann, which I think says a lot. But just talk about that. And I'm assuming you've seen that goal, Johnny, the Poirier volley. But it's, for me, you can talk all day about the actual volley in the end, but Zola's scoop over the top. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's a good job that we actually do like the sport of football as well as Sunderland, because on days like this, at least you get something you can cling on to and go, wow, at least that goal was class that went in against us in the 4-0. But yeah, hey, listen, they as Anne said, they'd assembled a really good team at that point, hadn't they? And they had a lot of, in a weird way, they were slightly ahead of their time in the sense that they had so many technicians in the team. You know, players like Zola, players like Poyet, who, you know, were technically brilliant. Obviously, you know, they could handle themselves physically. You don't become a good Premier League team if you can't do that. But yeah, sometimes I think you can just hold your hands up a little bit and say, look, the opposition on that day, Chelsea, were just miles better than us. And when they're scoring goals of that quality, nobody can really argue, can they? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can point fingers at, you know, our team selection and, you know, certain selections which may have made not the most sense in that game, but you can play whoever you want, wherever you want. Sometimes when a couple of, you know, class players decide to turn it on like they did that day and combine for that goal, there's nothing you can do, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. And then and actually the other thing I wanted to mention was Tor Andre Flo was in that Chelsea side and came on from the bench that day. We fast forward a couple of years to March 2001 when we beat Chelsea 4-2. Claudio Ranieri's Chelsea, this was. Patrice Carteron was making his debut for Sunderland. And I don't know if you remember much about this one, but this one was all about Don Hutchison. We went behind twice. Marcel Desailly put them ahead after 15 minutes. Hutchison equalised. Gudjonsson put them back ahead before half-time. and Hutchison equalised early in the second half, and then McCann and Phillips gave us a 4-2 win. But this was Don Hutchison in his pomp. He was brilliant that year.
Yeah, that was probably his best game for us, wasn't it? Possibly the Newcastle away one when he was excellent as well, wasn't he? But he was outstanding. Yeah, that was such a bad decision to let him go, and it was really silly. And I think we missed him obviously the season after that when things started going a little bit downhill for the Peter Reid era. But yeah, Hutch was class. That season we had him. I think we had him at his best. He was unbelievable. And yeah, I loved him. But yeah, it was a great game. That I remember. I do actually remember that one quite a lot because one of his headers where he kind of, I think it was his second goal where he had to header it back across the keeper, didn't he? And it went in. And he was even Sullivan, he was like, it was a good performance, that one by us. And again, we've mentioned a lot, even in this podcast, like character inside the fact that we went down twice. And obviously, you've got to remember, we don't have a great record there. And you've a few of them players would have been in the 4-0 game. I don't think Chris Lumsden was playing, but as part of part. But you got McCanns, your Phillipses, and that who were playing. Could probably remember that, thinking, we're going to get walloped again. But the show of character to come back from that was excellent, and it went running away with it. As you said, 4-2 was a comfortable victory at the end, wasn't it? I think what the whole kind of balance on this podcast is, it's never quiet when we go Chelsea. You know what I mean? So fans expecting a 0-0 on Saturday, I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest. We normally serve up some good games, but yeah, that was a good one. And you're right about Hutch, tremendous player. Tremendous woman.
Yeah. Rumours were, I think his wife wanted to move back to the capital or something like that. That was the rumours. But yes, exactly. So we've just got the bridges, unfortunately. But yeah, there you go.
So basically, if Register Press was made back then, she'd have stopped. She wanted 3 extra pints before coming out.
It's good for something then. Well, after that, we lost the next 6. We played at Stamford Bridge, which is a recurring theme, including a 7-2 defeat. But we'll go straight into 2010, Johnny, because the Steve Bruce side went to take on Carlo Ancelotti's Chelsea in November 2010. And I remember this because I was actually in the Caribbean on my honeymoon, watching this on a cruise ship, actually. And it was in a ship full of Americans, and they could not understand why I was going crazy. And I asked for this to be on the TV, and I was going absolutely nuts when I was watching this. But yeah, Nedum Onuoha turned into a Brazilian and just kind of took every single Chelsea player on twice, and circled back and took them on again just for luck. But and then Asamoah Gyan and Danny Welbeck. I mean, you look at the forward players we had: Zenden, Kieran Richardson, even Welbeck, Gyan, Jordan Henderson in that side, Steve Milbrand coming on off the bench. God, it's good memories looking at that Steve Bruce side. Sometimes when you look at specific games like that and you see the players we had, and this was one of those performances where it just clicked.
Absolutely, yeah. You do forget, don't you? I think, well, not forget, but you overlook sometimes how good his team was before it then got dismantled. And, a little bit, I can't remember what we were talking about in one of the other pods, but, sometimes the ending of something taints the memories of even when it was at his best. And I think that Steve Bruce team certainly was a victim of that. Whereas, everyone, when they think of Peter Reid, remembers the 7th place finishes. I think a lot of people, when they think of Steve Bruce, remember Wigan at home and, selling some of our best players and all the rest of it. But this game was Bruce ball at its peak, wasn't it? This was his team playing the best it could play. And obviously, you've mentioned Nedum Onuoha's amazing solo goal, which was it Gertrude at Forest tried his best to replicate the other week, didn't he? He'd clearly been watching the videos. But that goal sometimes overshadows how good the other goals in the game were. I think it was Jean's goal, wasn't it? Was a lovely bit of football and a great ball, and then he finishes it, really, really nicely. And then there's some interesting dance moves by the corner flag.
Magnificent. Magnificent dance moves, you mean? The ball.
Wouldn't have been out of place on your cruise ship honeymoon, I don't think, Chris.
I was doing the same thing, don't worry about that.
Yeah, but no, it was a brilliant game, wasn't it? The goals were high quality. We had a great quality team. It was obviously a phenomenal result. I mean, whenever you go to Stamford Bridge and win 3-0, you're happy. I mean, whenever you go there and win, you're happy. Never mind winning to nil. But the biggest thing for me, actually, when you look back, and this always gets forgotten for sometimes good reason, is this was only a couple of weeks after we'd just been done 5-1 by the Mags. You know, that was on Halloween, wasn't it? Halloween 2010.
It was the away game after, wasn't it? The next away game, wasn't
it? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? And again, as Ant's kind of touched on before, we've talked about character a few times on this pod, but that for me was a real display of proper grit and character from that team, because it's very, very easy to wilt when you lose a derby in any circumstance, never mind when you get hit for 5, and Nolan doing his stupid chicken dance and all the rest of it. So to then turn around and put in that performance at Stamford Bridge a couple of weeks later, that's, that just makes it all in some ways it makes it worse, because you think, why couldn't you have just done that a couple of weeks ago? But in another way, it makes it all the sweeter, because you go, actually, yeah, we are still a good team. It was a really needed seal of quality and proof that, yeah, actually we are building something decent here. And yeah, it was a fantastic game. Brilliant to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Convincing that day. And we lost the next couple, but in April 2014, ridiculously, really, when you look at the situation around it, we were the first to beat Jose Mourinho Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and absolutely ridiculous, really. Samuel Eto'o put Chelsea ahead after 12 minutes, and the whole world and his dog thinks it's all over because Chelsea are in front. And Connor Wickham was only 6 minutes later. Connor Wickham equalises, and then 82 minutes, definitely a penalty. Always, every day it's a penalty. And Fabio Borini stepped up, coolest man, and obviously former Chelsea player, of course, coming through there. Went back to the bridge and got us all 3 points. But I mean, again, and we'd said a lot on this, but it's one of those typical Sunderland things where you expect them to win, doesn't happen. You don't expect anything, and we get a ridiculous result like this. And this was one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was, part of the Great Escape, wasn't it? It was, it was a very strange time to be a Sunderland fan. Because it was, you're right. Like, I remember, a couple of weeks previously in that one, it was the City game, wasn't it? Where we were 1-0 down, turned it around, winning 2-1 with minutes left, and then Vita Manoni throws one into the net. But there was that kind of thing where you're like, oh, a minute, what's happening? Is this Sunderland trying to get out of this relegation zone? I was just all for not all for going down. I wasn't looking forward to it at all, but I'd given up. I've got to be honest. But yeah, that one was. You just imagine that's probably one of Jose Mourinho's as much as his managerial career has been excellent, which it has. I think he's lost his wonderful Stamford Bridge game to a relegation threatened Sunderland side, to Josie Altidore falling over the ball going down. Which I agree was a definite penalty. VAR would not have overturned it. Wasn't clear and obvious or anything like that. But yeah, it was. And you mentioned Connor Wickham, and this was kind of the period where Connor Wickham was just scoring goals every week, wasn't he? He turned into just Lionel Messi overnight. I think he was just. I don't think before or since he's had such a great goal scoring run, and I just remember just being chuffed to bits for him, because he'd been through his injuries and everything like that, hadn't he? And he came in, probably, threw him in and just said, he couldn't do any worse, which he probably couldn't have done, and banged in the goals. And to be fair, that was one of the games which helped us get out of it. So fair play. And yeah, the penalty at the end, I mean, like I say, we can have our laugh about it now, but it was given. And, the coolest man in the stadium that night was Fabio Borini, and what a penalty, and he does his celebration, doesn't he? I think he kind of apologised for doing it first, didn't he? The Chelsea man that started the celebration, but massive scenes, and there was massive scenes at my workplace who, me who shouldn't have been on the internet at work was on the internet, jumped up and down when the penalty went in. So there we go.
and if I'm right, that's the game where somebody unfurled the "Miracles Happen" Gus banner in the away end. The one and only time a bedsheet is acceptable at a football game.
Didn't they get someone sent off as well? Didn't one of the midfielders get sent off?
Nope, not in this one.
I can't remember who it was, and someone definitely got sent off again.
No, you see, you're tricking your memory into thinking it wasn't as spectacular as it actually was.
No, there we go. I thought they'd had someone sent off.
There must have been something. How did we beat Chelsea? There must have been something. Obviously, except the penalty decision. But Johnny, this is the last kind of victory at Stamford Bridge that we'll cover. Is this one your favourite?
It's a hard question, actually. As an individual game, the 3-0 was my favourite.
Right.
But because of what this was part of, I think maybe it does actually edge above. The whole context, ending Mourinho's home record, part of the Great Escape. And this can't have been long after, was it Spurs where we got beaten 5 or 6-1, where Lee Cattermole scored one of the best goals I've ever seen, where he just, found the corner like an absolute, laser-guided missile from 30 yards. Well, I'm saying missile, he basically passed it in, but, we'll over-egg it a bit. But yeah, like, to have gone from where we were, and Ant's right, we looked dead and buried. I was exactly the same. I'd totally resigned myself to relegation. I thought, wait, even if we'd had a good run of games, I didn't see us picking up the points. Never mind going to the Etihad, going to Stamford Bridge, going to Old Trafford, and having to do what we did. So, yeah, I think for what it represents, because that season was actually my favourite season I've ever seen from Sunderland, because of, like, the moments, the Great Escape, getting to the cup final, beating the Mags, like, all those things came together. And listen, there was some real dross in between.
I was going to say, that's why I'm giggling.
Yeah, I know. It's in a lot of ways, it's very typical Sunderland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your favourite seasons are the ones where it's just an absolute roller coaster. Like, we had some of the worst performances you'll probably ever see from a Sunderland team that season, and yet I'm waxing lyrical about it. And that game, yeah, it really summed up the chaotic nature of it. Even, like you say, the way we won the game, the penalty decision and all that kind of stuff. And last thing I'll say, by the way, that Connor Wickham goal, lovely little dinked finish, by the way. It gets overlooked because of everything that came after, but nice little goal, that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, like, you kind of look back, like, obviously Connor Wickham's now, been in the headlines for scoring that goal in the training game, wasn't he, for halfway line. But, even going back to the Chelsea one, the 3-0, sorry, the Chelsea one, the 3-0 one, with Danny Welbeck, scoring his first goal for us, and you've seen him still banging them in. You know what I mean? It's like, it's amazing how he's managed to keep himself fit and able for all that time. Because, I mean, it's a long time ago. You know what I mean? He's still only 34, so fair play to him. Like,
banging them in against Newcastle.
Right, yes. I don't want to say that, but yeah, might as well.
No.
I wanted to say it. I said it first, didn't.
on a consistent basis as well. Let's just put that out there. But just quickly on that 2-1, just looking at the bench that day for Chelsea, David Luiz, Obi Mikel, Frank Lampard, Andrea Schürrle, who came on, Demba Ba and Fernando Torres. Both of those also came on as well. But absolutely ridiculous bench. Oh, and
yeah, we beat a team 2-1 that had Samuel Eto'o, Fernando Torres, Frank Lampard in the squad, like.
And Mo Salah played over an hour that day.
He did, yes.
For Chelsea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for all Mourinho's success, terrible eye for a young player.
Yeah, that's it. And there was a few like that, wasn't there? Kevin De Bruyne, there's another one, of course, who they got rid of. But let's go, unfortunately, we have to go on to the last time. And let's talk about this as a form of kind of motivation for the game ahead of the weekend, because we go to the 21st of May 2017, which is the last time we visited Stamford Bridge.
Do we have to?
Well, like I said, let's go through it as a form of kind of, let's get motivated for the game at the weekend, because David Moyes took his Sunderland side. Let's just say it. Antonio Conte was manager of Chelsea, and it was the whole John Terry thing after 28 minutes, of course, because that was his squad number, and we give him
26 before you get crucified.
Was it 26? Oh, sorry, yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, I think, I probably just wanted to get it wrong, just because nobody remembers what's his squad number. Who cares what his squad number was anyway? But yeah, and the thing that I completely forgot about this game, Ant, was that we took the lead on 3 minutes.
Fletcher on it.
No, Manquillo, wasn't it?
Was it? Oh, was.
Manquillo, yeah.
Yes, Tavi Manquillo, yes.
Because until the start of this season, he was our last Premier League goal scorer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course, I forgot about that.
The impossible quiz question, that.
Was Stephen Fletcher, was he the one where we got hammered in the season before? He definitely scored down there, Stephen Fletcher. I remember that. But, Tavi Manquillo.
The hammering at Stamford Bridge. Yeah, that narrows it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Tavi Manquillo. I just remember that. Again, it's remembered for that bloody thing for John Terry. Honestly, I've never forget. I mean, David Moyes did a hell of a lot wrong in that year, which is unforgivable. But that probably tops the cherry, doesn't it? You know what I mean? You've just been relegated with, you know, I say a half decent side, we were terrible, but like just been relegated. You know, we're absolutely, you know, gutted as it is. Fans paying absolute boatload of money to get down there anyway. For some reason, because, you know, it's our last game in the Premier League, everything like that. And then we end up, you know, just bowing to that crap. You know what I mean? It was absolutely horrendous. I hated that.
Can I just say it's hilarious? Normally you'll be like, well, you know, he got a lot right, but he got this wrong. You went, well, he got a lot wrong, but he also got this badly wrong as well.
It just topped the cherry for his season one. He started off saying, oh, we're in a relegation battle in his second game, and then we did that. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm just glad we're not that side anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that's like 8 years later, and that would never happen now, would it? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
we've got a backbone now, haven't we? Yeah. I can't wait for David Moyes to come back to the Stadium of Light so I can boo the life out of him for that.
Monday night, isn't it?
Yeah. At Sky, you're going to be confused as out when Pickford gets an absolute rapturous ovation, and then Moyes gets the most dog's abuse you've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, actually, just quickly, that one was the 2015 one you were talking about with Fletcher. I think.
I remember him definitely scoring against Chelsea.
I think Loic Remy scored twice later on, and they won 3-1 in that one. But just coming back to this 5-1, again, Johnny, just looking at the goals, because they equalised 5 minutes later, but it was until the hour mark, you know, and they had the whole John Terry thing that was, you know, about half an hour gone roughly. Who knows what his squad number is? Can't remember anymore. But
who cares? Who actually cares?
Well, we did apparently on that day. But that was about on the half hour. But actually, that day we lasted until the hour mark. Really, where it was still 1-1 and we were still in the game. I had this again. It's bizarre that I had this memory of us just being 5-0 down after at half time or something like that, and the game being all over. I remember giving up on this game way before. Looking at the thing, an hour gone, 1-1. My memory tells me I gave up on the game after about 10 minutes. But actually, and they scored twice in the last in the 90th minute as well.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. You could have easily convinced me that game kicked off 5-1. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I would have believed you without question. And
I thought it was 5-0. I was positive it was 5-0 until I looked back at it.
Hey, if I didn't already know that Manquillo was the one who'd scored, you could have given me a million guesses and I would never have got it. But I was thinking about this when we were talking about the 6-2 before, and I was reminded of another 6-2, which is such a Sunderland sentence to be able to say, when we went to Goodison Park, would have been the season before this, so I think the 15-16 season, just after we completed the 6 in a row against Newcastle, and then we got done 6-2 against Everton. And again, you forget, in that game as well, we were actually level at 2s apiece before it then went on to be the drubbing it became. And this game's very similar, isn't it? Like you said, nobody remembers that Sunderland were 1-0 up in that game. Not a soul. I guarantee you, even Antonio Conte probably would be like, yeah, well, that was the easiest game of my career. So yeah, it's a very strange one to look back on, because A, you don't really want to look back on it, but B, I think it's so difficult to put yourself in the mental position you were in at the time watching it, because it was so bad and so, you know, it was such a wet fart of a season, wasn't it? Like it never started. It was terrible all the way through. Everything kind of melds into one, and it just feels like every game we were losing before we even started. And I think that theme then continued into the following season. So in a strange way for me, a game like this 5-1, almost encapsulates that period of Sunderland. You know, anything good about it is completely forgettable and may as well never have happened. Everything else was horrific and as bad as it can be. But then, you know, you do look back on it a little bit and you think, well, it's easy to say now that we're back in the Premier League, but I suppose, you know, you have to go through those periods, don't you, to appreciate what comes next. And my God, we went through it then, didn't we?
Oh, I can't remember much about that season. I really can't. I remember Wahbi Khazri scoring directly from a corner against West Ham, and that's probably about it.
Yeah, and the only reason we remember that is because Moyes was such an idiot and put him on the bench for 6 months first. Yeah,
I think literally Man City at the start of the season and Middlesbrough, and then Moyes said that, and I don't remember anything afterwards. That's
I think we went into a collective fugue state, didn't we, for the next 9 months? Wait, the next 8 years, really, but yeah.
Anyway, let's not dwell too much on David Moyes. But Ant, just getting back to the modern day, because I was just looking actually at the goals in 62 games. When we've just talked about some of those hammerings, we've conceded 140 goals across 62 games against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and we've gone through a lot of those spankings. But this is the point, isn't it? That where we are now, we just feel differently about Sunderland now in this Sunderland side, don't we?
100%. You know, and you've got to remember as well. Obviously, Chelsea at the minute are getting players sent off every week. So I think Gusto got sent off, didn't he, on Saturday? So he's out, and they've got a really bad injury record. You know, they've got a lot of players who are out at the minute. So it's not the, you know, what you mentioned, it's not the Sunderland of old. It's not the Chelsea of old either. You know, it's not the Chelsea who's hammering teams left, right, and centre. Don't get us wrong, they're a good side. You know, I had them before a ball was kicked. I had them in the top 4 this season. You know, because I thought, you know, the Cole Palmer effect and stuff like that, and them getting Joe Pedro's strike, I thought was just match made in heaven, to be honest. But obviously it hasn't quite worked out, and Palmer's injured now, and like I say, they have got a lot of injuries, and I don't think the home run has been particularly great, as teams have gone down there and got something off them. So it's just, it is that we're going to go down there, we're going to do what we do, and it's up to them to break us down. And I fancy us getting something on the counter-attack. I really do. And, you know, we come away with a draw. It's a fantastic result, brilliant result. Even now, though, we mentioned before, the fact that we've got this points gap over the likes of, you know, your West Hams, your Burnleys, your Wolves, and Wolves have got Burnley and West Ham have got Leeds this week. So 2 of them sides who are going to be brought are dropping points anyway, hopefully all 4, if both them are draws. So we're going there, and I hate to see, you know, free hits and stuff like that, because I don't think any game in this league's a free hit. But the pressure's not on us this week to go out and get a result. It'd be great to get a result. Don't get us wrong, but as long as we're not going to be getting beat 5-1 and carrying John Terry off the pitch, I think it's going to be a plus anyway. You know what I mean? It's going to be much better than the last time we were down there. So there we go.
Yeah, well done, Ant, to start getting rid of that negativity, the David Moyes negativity. Johnny, I mean, but Ant's right. And look, we're not getting carried away when actually we go to a team like Chelsea. And Ant said, it's not like a Chelsea side who have blown everyone away, but. And I think Gav said this on numerous occasions this season so far, that I can't imagine many games this season, because you look at Arsenal and you see maybe chinks in the armour. You look at Liverpool, chinks in the armour. You look at Man City, don't look as strong. I don't think we'll go anywhere this season without a bit of confidence that we can go there and get something.
Oh yeah, totally agree with that. I think this is not a Sunderland team who's going to go into any game already mentally writing it off as a defeat. Even though, you know, there's going to be times where we do as fans, you know, I think, look, chinks in the armour, fair enough, but going to the Emirates, if it's anything other than a defeat, I'll be very pleasantly surprised. But this weekend,
but the point is, you know, we'll give them a game.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, and I think that's the main thing this weekend, because Ant's completely right. You know, you look at the other fixtures, especially. I mean, even if all of the teams that we're expecting to be in the fight with us had really winnable home games, there's still not the pressure on us this weekend to get a result. It's a real nice added bonus that at least 2 of those teams mentioned are going to be dropping points, and ideally all 4. So yeah, this is a good opportunity for us to go into the game, because you're right, we're going to give them a game. You know, we're not going to go there and look, obviously famous last words and all the rest of it, but we're not going to go there and just capitulate. We're not that sort of team. Even when, you know, you think back to the game at Old Trafford earlier this season, the other week, and we were 2-0 down pretty early on, and things were really going against us, and we were not playing very well. But then, even then, in the most difficult and testing of circumstances, Labrise makes a change, and immediately we're competitive again, and immediately we're back in the game. You know what I mean? We could easily have scored goals in that game, and not to relitigate that particular match, but I think that's a good example of the fact that even if things are going against us this season, we've got it in the squad, and they've got that mentality where they can actually, almost this thing that like elite sports people have to do, where they sort of have to delude themselves a bit, and whatever bad things just happened, no, it didn't happen. Like, that didn't exist. You know, we didn't just concede that goal. we didn't just let them through and have a one-on-one and, you know, concede a penalty or whatever. No, that didn't happen, actually. It's 0-0. You know, we're in the game and we're gonna push forward and try and get something out of it. And it's going to be huge this season because, like I touched on before, you know, we're going into a real tough run here. We need the squad to have that mentality about them. They can't dwell on anything. So this weekend, like Anne says, there's no free hits in this league, but it's probably as close to one as you can get the circumstances we're in right now. And I think that hopefully should be a bit of a marker for the team. Like, okay, we're going into a real tough run now. These are where things are going to start getting real difficult. You're going to be tested to your absolute limits in basically every game over the next sort of, you know, 7, 8, 9 weeks. I keep saying numbers in threes today. Clearly, I'm indecisive. But, you know, I think this is because we've got so little pressure on us for this game in particular. Hopefully, we just start to build that mentality where, you know, if we go somewhere and we get beat and we ship a few goals, oh, wait, you know, there's always next week, there's always the next game. But within the game, I think you're right as well. And Ant's, again, right to point out Chelsea are struggling a little bit with injuries and, you know, everything's not quite sunshine and roses over there. So it is in some ways, it's a good opportunity to go there and get a result. And I think having obviously the confidence of just beating Wolves and being where we are in the table, I don't think we'll take it as lightly as I think we took Manchester United. You know, in hindsight, I think we maybe went into that one feeling a little bit too much like it was a free hit. I think we're going to be much more disciplined this time round. But yeah, it's a good opportunity, and we should be looking at it really as a chance to get a point or three, rather than, I think, you know, Sunderland teams of maybe 10, 15 years ago would have looked at it and thought, let's make sure the goal difference doesn't take too much of a battering today. I think this team are going to look at it and think, you know, we've got a real chance to bloody your big boys' nose here, so let's go out and take it.
Do you know what as well, Chris, just on that, like, we are going to surprise someone at some point in this team, you know, like a Chelsea or a Liverpool or something at home or something like that. We will surprise somebody. And you know, I think this is a game where we could do, but like I say, they've got, you know, squad injuries, they've got Gusto out suspended, so they are going to have to make changes anyway. I know they've got a good win over the weekend, but it was against the Forest side who then sat the manager on the floor. So it's not good. It's not all that one where I don't think it's this like cut and dry where it's going to be an easy 3 points for Chelsea, to be honest.
Yeah, well done, gents. Expertly steered round to a positive end to this pod after mentioning the Scottish manager, who will not name again. But
lovely Shakespearean little reference there. Beautiful.
I'm glad it worked on more levels than I thought to start with. Brilliant. But thanks again, everyone, for listening. Of course, we'll have all the build-up covered this week, either on the Roker Report website or, of course, we'll be back tomorrow with another How We're the Podcast. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like the Fantasy Football Scout podcast. If you want to win at FPL and dominate your mini-leagues this season, then make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Football Scout podcast. You'll get all the tips, stats, picks, and elite transfer knowledge from some of the very best in the game. Just search Fantasy Football Scout wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.